Well, welcome, Dave.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
Would you do a little bureaucracy first, and please state your full name and the year you were born?
My name is Dave Rentz, born in 1952, 11/5 if you want to send me a present.
Okay.
1952, I'll be 60, I don't know math, but I'll be old this week, or November, I'll be older.
Okay, now we got that out of the way.
It's your birthday this year, right?
I've got one this year.
Yeah, okay.
I hope.
All right, not a leap year, baby.
No. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a bunch more. Well, Dave, I told you the format a little bit about what we're going to talk about, so I guess I'll start right in and ask you, where were you just before you came to Jerome? And what year did you come here, and why? Why'd you make the journey?
Well, originally from Minneapolis, I did my hard time in the 70s and trying to get my Volkswagens to start. And my grandfather lived in Phoenix, and I'd always go visit him when I was between bands or couldn't stand the weather anymore. And I finally just said, heck, I'm moving down there. So I moved down with my little bug and my drum set, my stereo, and my bicycle, all the important things, and one load.
Well, did you just head west, or were you
I came down to visit my
specifically-
grandfather and said, I'm staying here. Well, actually, I did a bicycle trip from San Francisco to Yuma and across to Arizona. And when I got to my grandfather's, I said, I'm moving down here.
Where'd he live?
In Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Phoenix is where I first moved to, and got a driveway car back to Minneapolis, dug my car out of the snow, packed up everything, and moved down here. And then with my wife at the time, and my son was born, and I didn't want to raise him in the city. And I'd played with some bands in Sedona and Prescott, and said, I'm moving up here. I don't want to raise my kid in the city, and moved up here and hoped that I'd find music. And boy, it's been wonderful ever since.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
you came up here with your wife and your son?
Yeah, my son
and-
was 2 months old, and we moved into a little place in Patio Town. The rent was $75. That was
That's affordable?
Affordable, yeah. And like I said, I asked the gal, do you know any musicians? Well, this guy named John Ziegler, might give him a call. So I called him, and he had a band that was just calling it a day, and him and Sheila were going to do their old-time photo thing. But we started playing, and I remember we got together at the high school, and we did a reggae version of Kathy's Clown, and 3-part harmony, and everybody was like, wow, let's do another song. And it was magic.
Wow, so you just jumped right in, huh?
Yeah, and I'm like, God, we got a gig. And I wanted a gig right away because that's how I make my living. But so I had to play with a couple other bands in the meantime until Lingo started in December 3rd, 1982. That was our first gig. We were called a bunch of different things. We played at Paul and Jerry's in the Spirit Room, and we needed to go play some other places, but every place we played, we pack them in there, and it was just a magical band. And
Yeah, well, let me back up. I forgot to ask you what year that was that you came.
it was 1982.
that you came to Jerome, and
Yes.
you've been in Phoenix maybe the year before or
Yeah,
something.
my son was born in December 81, and I moved up here spring of 82.
Okay. And so Lingo wasn't hadn't started yet,
No.
but shortly thereafter.
John and Tony and Teddy, they had a band called Ambush.
Okay.
And Robbie Rhodes, Danny Rhodes' brother, was the drummer, and he had already moved to New Orleans, so I didn't meet him. But yeah, there was a chemistry there that was undeniable, and
So you were the first drummer?
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
And so what was the band lineup?
Teddy Rocha on bass and
bass.
vocals, Tony Bruno on slide guitar, John Ziegler on rhythm guitar, and me on drums.
Oh, wow.
And 3-part harmonies, boy, it was just, yeah.
Fun stuff.
It was like a big warm bath, just a great group hug. Like, God, I found a home. And I've always wanted to live in small towns. I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, hated the suburbs, cultural wasteland, moved to the city. Things got stolen, and it's just the stress of city. I'm like, I want to live in Mayberry, And when I moved up here, especially with my son, I was like, I don't want to raise my boy in the city somewhere. And just, yeah, this town welcomed me with open arms.
Yeah. So you were down in Patio Town for a while. Did you move up to Jerome?
Well, my wife and I split up after my son, about a year after, when he was about a year old, and I moved up here, and was living out of my Volkswagen bus, just camped outside of town, and she was still living down there, and then an apartment opened up. Not an apartment, but a little shack behind the Spirit Room. Glenn Beige owned that, and I remember moving in there, and it was $130, well within my budget. Had an outdoor bathtub.
Oh, is this where Slim lived for
Yeah,
a while?
yeah.
Okay, I know that place.
Yeah, lots
Well,
of
it's
people.
gone now, is it?
It's
They
still
tear it down?
it's still there.
No, they tore down the outhouse. They left the
Yeah. There's an outhouse built right on the sewer
Yes.
line, and all my son's toys all went. The high spot it was in the middle of the house, and everything sloped down. So all the marbles and balls and trucks were out in the outside area, and one room shack, and it was great.
So this is 1982, huh?
Yeah.
And where do I want to go next? When you first got here, what was going on? How'd the town feel? What was the vibe?
The weekends were busy. Not like, during the week it was calm and wonderful and a safe place for kids to be playing and walking around and stuff. And then on the weekends it was a little busy, but where I lived there, even though I was just behind the Spirit Room, it was like a very peaceful place, and you didn't even know that there was a busy town going on, And so in the wintertime I had to use the bathroom up at the English kitchen because the toilet was frozen solid. But we made do, and I had some uptight relatives come down, and they were appalled with the living conditions and thought, what kind of father am I? We were having a ball. We were oblivious that somebody was judging us, and we were having a ball, taking a bath outside and splashing water and eating blackberries. It was just, and that's why I moved away from Minnesota. There was a bit of uptightness there that just wore on me. I'm like, I want to move someplace where people are kind and wonderful. And
you found it?
This town, yeah.
Yeah. Who were your friends at that time besides Ziegler and the
Well,
band
usually
members?
just the band, and then the people that came to see us. And but kind of a loner. I pretty much kept to myself. But I also decided that I was an artist. Somebody said, "Oh, Dave, you need to put some of your collages in the VVAA, the Verde Valley Arts Association." And I said, "Well, I'm kind of on a fixed income," and somebody said, "I'll pay your entry fee." It was $10 entry fee, and I sold 2 pieces of art.
Oh, wow.
And I always thought, to be an artist, you got to have credentials and go to art school and all that. And then I realized, to be an artist, all you got to do is make art. To be a musician, all you got to do is make music. And so, that was my introduction. And I said, well, darn it, I'm going to be an artist then.
I'm very familiar with your dot stuff.
Yeah.
Were you doing something
I
different
was
back
doing
then?
collages back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't draw or paint or anything, but I could cut out and assemble composition. I got really good at composing images, and had a couple little shows. I was giving drum lessons to this gal, and she was the bank manager at one of the banks down in Cottonwood, and she said, "Hey, if you'd like to do an art show," and it's like, "Oh, okay." And so I did an art show and didn't really sell anything, but on the day after I took the show down, somebody said, "Hey, Dave, there's a big article of you in the paper," and I'm like, got the paper and like, wow, it's just a very flattering art show. We don't know who this guy is, but at the very end of the article, Dave Rentz is an artist, and I was like, wow, I've never experienced this before, and everything has just fallen into place. I show up and be present and share my love for my fellow man, and it's just been like a warm bath. I don't know. I've just never met a town like this.
Yeah, it is something special.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason I'm doing this series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try to capture it. So, so you made your living, you played in the band, you did some artwork, any other things or skills that you...
Just music and art.
Just
and,
music and art.
That's
and
all
you've been supporting yourself that way since you've been here.
Since 1968. I've had a few regular jobs, car washes, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm a musician. And so I just told myself, it's like, I'm going to play music and art no matter what it takes. So I've learned the value of living simply, and been living on my truck for almost 8 years now and doing a lot of pet sitting, and the thought of throwing money away on rent, and it just seems odd. So I'm basically on tour within a 5-mile radius. And I live out of my tour bus, which is just a truck. But
Yeah.
if you say you're living out of your car, people have an opinion about that. But no, I'm doing just fine.
Well, I always have admired that about you, that
Yeah.
you know what your focus is, and you're going to make the sacrifices you need to do to get the reward
Yeah.
you're looking for. And
My job is to entertain people and probably encourage people to pick up an instrument. My theory is if everyone's playing music, we're all getting along.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
how can you be mean-spirited and angry if you're playing music? You're in the middle of a song, and to me, that's a sacred place. Nobody can get you when you're in the middle of a song. They can get you after the song's over, but yeah, music is just, it's healing for me, and it's healing for the people whose lives I touch with my music.
So was Major Lingo writing original material right from the get-go?
A lot of reggae stuff. That was my introduction to reggae. I'd really never played much, but I love all music, so
And
I'm
you
just
were playing a full kit with them?
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Drum set's been my main instrument, and but then I started saying, what's the music that's going to come out of me? So I started playing hand drums, and somebody gave me a didgeridoo, and then flutes, and then I got a dulcimer and a ukulele and a mandolin, and so just self-taught. I
Yeah.
just taught myself how to do these things. I started giving myself permission to be a songwriter. Not everybody wanted my songs, and that's like, well, that's not going to stop me. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, you have a stellar reputation as a fine musician. For all these years and all the different people you've played with, I was wondering what other bands were going on at the time when.
well,
Major
after Major Lingo ran its course, I kind of felt a little stifled there, and so then I joined.
Let's back up a little bit. When you were playing with Major Lingo, Mick King, any of those guys? Or
Oh, yeah,
who else
Mick-
was playing around here?
Mick King, Patio, a guy named Patrick O'Malley, who's since passed on. He'd pick up somebody's regular guitar and pick it up and play it upside down. He had an incredible ear. Mick King had an incredible ear. If somebody was out of tune, he'd motion for them to come over and strum it, and like, there we go. And so I love it when people have a good ear for tuning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love an in-tune instrument.
critical.
I've been listening to guitar players tune all my life, and
So Major Lingo was playing at the Spirit Room, even Paul and Jerry's.
we
Back
play
then?
Spirit Room, and then we go to Paul and Jerry's, and back to Spirit Room, and we were packing the place. And
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the legend. I mean, all the twirlers, the dancing hippie chicks, for lack of a better word. I mean, was that going on right from the beginning, or did that build
yeah,
over the
it
years?
was like I said, it was just magical. Everybody's like, man, you guys are awesome. And I'd take recordings back to Minneapolis and play them for my good musician friends, and they're like, oh my goodness, there's nothing like
Yeah.
that up there. And man, Dave, that's some great. And then John's an incredible songwriter, and started doing that stuff, and it was just like, I've never been in a band like Major Lingo before. I was always doing cover tunes and
Right.
just grateful to be playing music for a living, but I always wanted to be in an original band. But original bands up in Minneapolis didn't work. Everybody had day jobs because you couldn't get any gigs if you played cover
Right.
if you
And
didn't
more
play cover
expensive to
tunes.
live. Yeah. So did Major Lingo play? You guys must have played in Phoenix and around the state.
We started playing in Phoenix and Tucson, and remember after I left Lingo, we had played down in Tucson. We had a great following down there. Well, 2 years later, I moved down there thinking this is a better, things were drying up around here musically. And so around 86, 87, I moved down to Tucson. And by the time I got down there, things were drying up down there too. But I was able to find 2 or 3, I was starting to freelance a lot, and I love doing that. I love the variety of playing with everybody. And that was the other thing up in Minneapolis. If you played with another band, the main band was threatened. Well, hey, you got to make a choice. And
Cheating. Huh?
I just like playing with everybody, and since I've been doing it up here, the schedules just always work out, and not everybody plays full time. And
Yeah, I didn't realize you moved back down to Tucson. For
yeah,
a
I was
little
living
while.
I didn't want to live in the city because I got spoiled with this small town. So I lived in a little town called Sahuarita, which was about 20 miles south. And
Right.
in fact, I just ran into a couple in Clarkdale this morning. Where are you folks from? Oh, south of Tucson. Sahuarita? And they said, yeah, I used to live there. Oh, it's a different village now. Yeah, and a lot of pecan orchards. But then that ran its course, and I started missing everybody, missing my family. So I moved back up here.
Yeah. So did your son stay for a while?
He
I
stayed
know
here,
now
and
that
then
your
through
wife
the
had
divorce,
moved away.
we took turns raising them, and then
Right.
through the divorce, she finally moved back to Minneapolis and took them, and I couldn't move back. You
Yeah.
know, it was just, I tried to go back, and I'd like start slipping into depression because I'd had a taste of something better. And yeah, family, well, you got to move back here. And I'm like, I'd like to, but
Yeah.
I saw my dad go through his depression and drinking, and he was a very sensitive man too. And I'm like, I'm afraid if I move back, that'll happen to me. And so
Yeah.
Jerome is a healing center. The whole Verde Valley here is a healing center as far as I'm concerned. We're all doctors and patients on different days. It's an open air mental institute.
Well, yeah.
You know, they say we're crazy up here when I moved to patio town. So tell me about Jerome. Oh, those people up there think they're special. Well, let me go check that out. And well, they are special. You know, they're a little different, but there's a camaraderie and there's a support system of being a little different. You
Yeah,
know?
what did somebody, Mimi said this yesterday. She said it's a voluntary insane asylum.
Right, right. And Main Street seems like a lot, and Spirit Room seems like a bar in the lobby of this open air town. And all the streets are like hallways and businesses, and people live in this room and that room. And
Yeah. So I know you described your lifestyle. Basically, it's music and art, and that's it. And so that requires you to move around a little bit. Were you in Jerome, then out for a little while, in, back and forth?
Well-
I mean, you've been around. Everybody I know, it's kind of as if you live here.
yeah,
You know, we all think of you as being from here.
yeah. Well, some of the places, the rents were going up, so I was able to find cheaper rent down in Cottonwood, but I still came up here to play all the time. And then I got a studio down at the high school.
Oh,
and
that's right.
So I've been there for 28 years. I got a little storage unit there, and I had a couple little studio galleries that I had down in the basement level, and I lived there. And we were told that you artists aren't supposed to live there. Well, the lady that manages it finally went to the town hall, and there is no law. So it's just a little small town gossip is another interesting thing.
Yeah, isn't it?
And
Well,
I
yeah,
remember there was a time where I told somebody, oh, I got an offer from this band in England. I'm moving to England. And so I just put that out there just as a test. And by the time it came back, Dave, I hear you're moving to South America. I mean, it was just like, isn't that interesting? And I've written songs about small town gossip and how silly it is, but we all do need a story. And, you know, it's...
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I always joke that people know what I'm going to do in this town before I do it.
Yeah.
It seems like. Well, yeah, that takes me back. That's a subject. Do you remember when you first moved in at the high school and what was going on there? I have a little history with that
I just
place,
thought it was
but-
cool. Well, a friend of mine, Bob Howard, who's since moved on, he was renting a studio to paint, and then he had another studio where he was sawing wood for frames and stuff. And he asked me if I wanted to split the studio. I was like, sure. I've always wanted a studio, and had a lazy boy chair in there. And it's like, oh, you're not supposed to live here, but you can be there 24 hours a day. So I didn't understand that weird concept. So I would like be real discreet and fold up my sleeping bag. And but yeah, to have a working studio, and then I'm like, well, gee, maybe I could sell some art through here, you know, as well, because people were coming in, visitors were coming in, and
Were the Westcotts still managing
Yeah,
at that time?
yeah.
And who were the other artists down there while you?
boy, there was a guy named
in the
Richard
early
Matson
days.
who also did collages, huge
yeah.
collages. Don Bassett was still alive, and he
Oh,
was
right.
he was a neighbor, and boy, Christy Fisher was in there.
Oh, I didn't know.
People could remind me, oh, Dave, don't you remember I had a studio there? There was another guy that did neon lights. He'd make his own neon tubing and stuff. And yeah, just a whole lot of interesting people. And everybody, back then, everybody was supportive of the other artists. Tourists would come in, hey, you got to come check out this other guy's art. And Richard Matson was like, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to present Dave Rentz. And because they'd already seen his art, and then they'd show me my art. And it just felt wonderful. It was just
You were doing collages still at that time?
no, actually,
You start
no,
doing-
actually, I was right on the cusp. I started doing the dotting. and-
Right. And you've done those on, gosh, don't sit still too long. Dave will dot you.
I've dotted everything, and
Records.
yeah. In fact, there's the
pottery.
Pura Vida Gallery. Some of the little corner windows are still, I did dots on those and they're still there. And I feel honored that somebody hadn't scraped that off.
Now, the Jerome Instrument Company was down there, but when you moved in, they had gone? They had moved out?
Yeah.
This was 80, what? Late 80s maybe that you moved in?
Yeah, I think it was JIC and then it was AZI.
What's that?
But it was another company that came in, but they were doing mercury detecting devices,
Oh, okay.
I think.
Right.
They had employed a lot of people in the town. And
Yep. Yeah, and then the high school kind of, it seemed like it got a little quiet, and then
Don was kind of the self-appointed, caretaker of the place, and I used to work for Don, helping him with his assemblages, and I liked his art, and
Yes.
daughter Anne, I loved her art, and I tend to get along really well with other artists because
we
understand what it is like to be an artist.
Right. Well, tell me a little more about Don Bassett. I met him a long time ago through Ann Gale and those guys who owned the church, and I would come up here a long time ago and met him. But he was always struck me as just out there artist character. I mean,
he was a character, and he loved showing his art to people, and he had little stories, and where he got this little thing that became a head, and then this is an arm, and
it was kind of found art sculpture.
Yeah.
And he had the room down in the front on the ground floor, or the basement floor?
The basement.
Yeah.
The south.
Right across from the auditorium.
Yeah. Great. One of my favorite studios because it had light from the north and the east. And
yeah. Well, your little storage area, part of it was the projection room.
Yeah, projection booth, and I still have it.
Oh, you do?
Oh, it's filled with all my unsold art. So.
Well, that's nice of Roberta to let that continue, because things are kind of changing down there. I went through one of the phases, as you probably know. I had a studio down there, but that was a different era. But let's get back to music. And when you first got here, you said you kind of a loner. You didn't really hang with many of the other artists, or I'm wondering who your close buds were. Like
usually just whatever band I was in. That was my group of people, and then when
that was your
band broke up, then I met a new group of people and tried to stay in touch with people, but everybody's busy. And then the fans, the certain fans would come for a certain band, and that was my little group of friends.
Yeah, girlfriends back at that time.
Oh, I've had a few girlfriends.
It's different here in town.
I never dated. I would just be with one woman at a time, and just looking for somebody who resonated with me. And a lot of times the people that I resonated with they had social issues, and didn't trust me because you as musicians are a certain way. I'm like, I'm not like most musicians. Oh, you drummers. And it's like, so all my life I've kind of fought the stigma of, oh, you musicians, oh, you drummers, you're Neanderthals, you just beat on things. And I'm very articulate. I'm German, so I have to be articulate and take pride in what I do, and I'm organized and dependable. A lot of people are, Dave, you remember the gig? Oh, it's in my book. And then if you play with me, you know that I'm dependable. You can count on me.
Yeah, well, you were here.
Because I'm trying to...
You were here early today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important.
Trying to dispel the myth of, you musicians, they're responsible. And
well, I must say that, that's a little bit of the Jerome character, I think, of, what do they call it? Jerome time.
Yeah.
Stranded time. Jerome's stranded time. I've never been able to do that. I'm like you. If I say I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna be
integrity is everything.
Yeah.
How behave the way you want to be known for.
Right. Yeah. Show up, do what you said you were gonna do, and say please and thank you.
You can count on me.
Yeah. It's important.
You should probably get a shirt made.
You can count on me. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to regroup in my head and find some other stuff to ask. When you thought about today, were there any stories about the early days, parties, events, things that happened in Jerome?
Well, I remember the Jerome bust. That was, that was pretty exciting. The town, if I can remember right, the town whistle went off, and that was the cue for everyone to knock doors down and make the big bust. And apparently they didn't find much, and they were probably embarrassed by that, so they had to kind of throw the book at everybody and
Right.
went to visit friends that, were incarcerated because of they had a couple joints, and I'm like, it was in New Times, and
Oh
everybody's
yeah,
like,
I think it was in the
went back
Republic.
to Minnesota, and people like, oh, I heard that
Yeah,
the
small
sheriff
town,
was
everyone-
implicated. Well, the sheriff wasn't implicated.
The town council, the sheriff, everybody
and
was
he was-
busted.
Yeah, most of the sheriffs are like, we know you guys smoke marijuana, just don't do it in front of me because then I'll have to arrest
Right.
you. You
Well,
know?
there's
And
Ron Ballator, and
Yeah.
he got in trouble for
Yeah.
trying to be cool with
Ron
everybody.
was a prince.
He's a really great guy.
Most of our sheriffs have been really good.
He told me his part of that story in depth. I had never heard that.
Yeah.
It was pretty. I mean, when he got in legal trouble, he told me that the town, he didn't have a lot of money. He's police chief in small town Jerome. It's not like a big money making thing, but someone walked up to him and handed him an envelope with about $4,000 or $5,000 in it to help him with his legal fees. And he shed a couple tears telling me that story. It
That's
was
Jerome.
really important.
Right there is
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Jerome.
A little microscopic. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I remember when Glenn Beige, I was renting from him that little shack, and
Who's
he
Glenn
had
Beige? I don't.
Glenn Beige. He lives where Mary Wills lives now,
Okay.
and he was growing marijuana between his bamboo stand of bamboo there, and he got busted, and it was kind of a big event, and then a year later, I kept seeing him. He was working on buildings, property, and I'd always see him at the end of the day take his motorcycle out and ride up over the mountain. I thought, well, that's his relaxing thing. Well, apparently a year later, he was growing marijuana on the side of the mountain. He got popped again, and this time they were going to really throw the book at him, and pressure became too much, and he committed suicide.
Oh man.
And it rained for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I mean, everybody was devastated because Glenn was on the fire department. And he was a kind of a loner, but a very, very dependable guy, And I rented from him, and he said, "I'll give you free rent if you could take care of my chihuahuas, my dogs, when I'm going to India. You can stay at my place and just feed my dogs." And so I was really looking forward to that, and I just felt so blessed to have these opportunities. And then when he died, it was a sad time in Jerome.
Huh. I
Yeah.
had not heard that story before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It rained for 2 weeks. Every day was gray, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the great things of this town is when people get in trouble, the town comes together
Yeah.
and supports them.
Yeah. Anytime somebody dies, there's always a benefit get together at Paul and Jerry's. Even if somebody died from alcohol consumption, everybody shows up and consumes alcohol, and and everybody's hugging, and that's when you meet people that, oh man, I haven't seen you in years. Well, I keep to myself, and so kudos for funerals to bring people together again.
Yeah, we just did that this past week for Big Jer.
Yeah.
But people come together for health issues. Somebody has a motorcycle accident or whatever. There's a
Right.
benefit. People go by, bring people food. That's a wonderful thing about this town. Yeah. Anything else you can think of while I regroup? Big events besides the bust.
Well, all the
Did that touch you at all? Were you? I mean,
I was a little more discreet after that. But,
Right.
But at the same time, it was just kind of like, what a waste of time and energy. I know you guys are trying to uphold the law, but there's a certain point of
Yeah. What's the point?
go after the difficult people, the people who are mean and nasty.
Yeah,
These
the
are just
violent
people
ones.
self-medicating because it helps with their creativity and calm them from, the
Right.
big bad world outside of Jerome,
Yeah.
But I understand laws are laws,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of behind the scenes stories about how that all came about. I won't bring those up.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, have you ever moved away for any stretch of time?
Well, I moved down to Tucson. Things are
Yeah,
kind of drying
for-
up here. And
right. Drying up musically, you felt
Yeah,
like?
there
even?
just wasn't much work, and I thought, well, maybe I'll move to Tucson. Maybe time to go back to a bigger city, not Minneapolis. But
tell me a little bit about the dry up. Like, I mean, there was Mick King, there was Major Lingo, all those guys just stopped playing, and
Well,
or there
there was
wasn't.
bars were not having music that used to have music,
Oh, okay.
and boy, and then I started teaching. Then people said, "You give drum lessons?" Well, I've never done it, but I can show you what I know, and didn't feel like I was qualified to be a drum teacher, but I've certainly been doing it for a long time, so I can teach application and how to listen to music and how to play responsibly and appropriately to the sounds you're hearing around you. And so I gave myself permission to teach, and so then I start teaching a lot, and I tell people right up front, they're looking for somebody to teach you how to read charts and all that stuff. There's other people out there, but I've been doing this all my life, so I can share that knowledge and wisdom, and I'm a gentle teacher. You know, if a student's having a hard time with something, I'll say, let's just slow it down. Let's take a break and let's just have some fun and play. Because I had a couple of teachers that were very difficult, and
Okay.
well, if you're not going to practice, like, so I thought if I ever teach, I'm going to be gentle.
Yeah.
And the same with being a parent. I'm going to be gentle with my son and teach him lessons and value, but not dominate him. He's just as important, everybody's just as important as everybody else. A newborn baby is just as valid as some wealthy person or, somebody. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
And we're only here for a short time. So I think if once everyone understands that concept and can be nice to even your enemies, be nice to your enemies. Like, can you imagine what it's like to be a person that's known as a mean person? You almost want to give them a group hug, and say, "Come on, man, stop splashing. Enjoy your time here." And I try not to give up on people that I don't feel comfortable around, but sometimes I just have to distance myself.
Yeah, sometimes you do.
Yeah, but I send them love and wish them well. And
Yeah. It just occurred to me, I'm sitting here and noticing that we left a didgeridoo in the frame. And that's something
did
that
you
you're...
remember to show this to me?
Did you remember it? Well, that's a didgeridoo that I got from you a couple years after I moved here in 94, 95 probably.
Yeah.
Already you were pretty well known for tell me about that. The agave.
Well, a friend of mine, a musician friend, he came down with MS, and I was playing with him over in Prescott, and finally he started falling down on stage, so he had to stop playing. He moved to Seal Beach with his parents, but the radio, he had access to so many great radio programs, and he got into some radio program that had didgeridoo music, and he was fascinated with that, and that was something that he could play. He couldn't play guitar anymore, but he could play didgeridoo, and so I'd often go out and visit him, and so he started making cassette tapes for me, and I'm like, wow, what a cool sound. And then Bob Howard, he said, well, I can't play a musical instrument, but I'm going to cut down an agave and hollow it out, and so together we kind of well, I don't know how do you play these things, and I think your beeswax. We put beeswax on the mouthpiece, and he couldn't play it, but I started getting the sound, and 6 months later I got the circular breathing, and I can supplement my meager music income with making didgeridoos. So I started making these out of agave stalks, and
Yeah.
And
well,
probably,
if you've told me that you're very aware, you wait till they fall over, till they're dead.
A couple times I cut them down and cut into the larva of a carpenter bee, and I'm like, Dave, be respectful. So I'd found that usually this year's crop is harvestable in February or March.
They fall down once each year?
Well, they don't fall down, but the seed pods have dispersed their black and white seeds.
Right.
And so I just go around and knock on one. I'm like, ooh, there's a density there that sounds really good. And then I pound on it with my fist, and a flutter of black and white seeds would fall on me, and it kind of felt like a ceremony. And I would just cut down the ones that sounded good, and I got really good at knowing the nuances of the instrument. I would split them with a butter knife, and
oh yeah, you split them all the way along the...
Yeah, well, you take a
completely
butter knife, and
half
it just takes a natural route down and splits them. And
Because you coat it on the inside?
then I coat the inside. I didn't want to use any toxic material, so I would coat it with carpenter's glue, and that seemed to work, and glue them back together again. And people were like, well, where do you get those instruments? Well, I make them. Oh, I'd like to buy one. I figured it was a century plant, 100. So I'd sell them for $100. And then the girlfriend at the time was working with fabric paint, and so I thought, well, maybe if I decorate them, I could sell them. Maybe that would be a selling point. So then I started dotting things, and I stopped doing collages and started dotting. And I was obsessed with patterns. I've always loved designs and patterns, and so then I got known as the dot guy.
The dot guy.
I
Now,
was the didge guy, and then the dot guy, and the drummer guy, and all these things with
all the
D.
D's.
D. Dave.
Dave.
Didge, drums. Dots.
Very funny. Well, yeah, no, you're well known for that, and it's a fun instrument to play. I've been able to I can get a sound out of it. Now, tell me about your patterns. I mean, this is I'm not trying to be punny here, but it's indigenous to Australia, correct?
I've never heard that pun.
Yeah.
No,
I
I just start and.
So you haven't researched those things? You just come up with your own
Oh
patterns?
yeah. People say, "Oh, are those Aboriginal designs?" And
Yeah.
like, I don't. In fact, somebody said, "Oh, your artwork is a lot like the Aborigines," and I didn't know anything about their art. I just knew about the music. So I got some books out of the library and like, well, isn't that interesting? I started playing the didgeridoo, and then I started channeling dots and stuff. But I wasn't interested in copying anybody's designs, but I liked the material. And
I need to check my DNA history.
Yeah, another D.
Another D.
So yeah, people ask me, so do you do a design ahead of time? I'm like, no. To me, it's the unfolding of start with one dot and the next thing and the choices. And like, wow, look at the end result. I got to do something else. So I got obsessed with dotting, and so I started making a good living doing dots.
Yeah.
Dotting people's guitars. If you're in a band with me, I will dot your guitar, no charge.
Yep. I've been in one of those bands. I see them all over. Yeah, your dots are everywhere.
Motorcycle helmets, rocks, records. Yeah, I even tried my fingernails once, but as it dried, it felt weird, and so I had to pull it off.
Well, I don't want to point any fingers or cast any aspersions. You know, from the time I moved here, driving around town, usually coming up the hill, I would often see the most amazing rock sculptures.
Oh yeah.
Balanced precariously, and they would stand for days, and I would drive by a couple times and go, how the hell is that staying there in the wind and all this stuff?
All right,
do you know anything about this?
It was me. I was in a library in Sedona, and I saw this coffee table book with a guy named Andy Goldsworthy, and I looked at that and I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
He's a rock stacker.
Rock stacks, nature, anything natural, he would manipulate all these things. And so I started stacking rocks, and people have been building cairns for quite a while. And
is that what they're called, cairns?
CAIRNS. I think I was on bicycle tours up in Utah and started seeing these cairns. And I asked a local guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, the sheep herders stack those as a guide to They look for the next cairn, and that's
right.
a guide to where they're taking the sheep. And so people have been stacking rocks for a long time, but I started doing it, and people like, Dave, oh God, I love those. How do you do that? Do you glue those? And I became obsessed with them. And around the high school,
yes.
The guardrail, because there was a sky for a background, they really stood out. And so I'd go out there every morning, since I was just around the corner at the high school, and every morning, and before everybody else woke up, I'd go out there and assemble 5 or 6 rock stacks, and then I go uptown to the Flatiron and say, Dave, great stacks.
Nice.
And I was in there, this is a funny story. I was in there once, and there was a young kid in there waiting for the school bus. Apparently him and his mom lived in a camp potato patch up at the top of Mingus. And somebody said, oh, Dave, great stacks. And I was like, oh, thank you. And the kid said, my mom knocks those over. She says those are the devil. And we all kind of looked at each other and were kind of mildly amused. And then the bus came, and the kid got on the bus, and I'm like, okay. And people, Dave, doesn't it make you mad when people knock the stacks over? Not at all. I get to redo it again. And sometimes it's a raven will land on it, and whoops, In fact, I even I had a video camera, so I started videotaping these rock stacks. I think I put a copy in the library. I don't know if it's still in there, but yeah, I started stacking rocks, and it's just very pleasurable thing. In fact,
oh, well, I got to tell you, it's pleasurable for the rest of us. I mean, It's always a surprise. It's a new one. You didn't see this one before, and it just puts a smile on your face.
I mean no harm. I just do it because it stimulates people like, whoa, look at that.
Yeah.
And it personifies perfection.
How so?
It's a perfect balance. if it wasn't, it would fall over. So from all angles, you walk around, and every angle is exciting. It looks wonderful. If you were to glue something, it would stick out.
Right.
And it's just a thing. It teaches you balance. And I used to be a gymnast, so I've got pretty good balance. So it was just an opportunity for me to perpetuate that balance.
Ah.
Oh, and then just outside of town, I would build them at that 14-car pull-off.
Yes.
And I'd get like 30 of them going, maybe a bit much, but heck, I like being out there and visiting with tourists. I always try to be a goodwill ambassador. People say, well, where's this town of Jerome? Oh, you're almost there. And where some of the other locals could be a little off-putting, and oh, you tourists, you know, and I'm like, no, I'm proud of living in this town. I want to let people know that most of us are kind and welcoming. And so I build these rock stacks, and I was there once, and I had all these stacks going, and I'm on the other side of the wall, and this car pulls up, and a couple kids get out, and they jump over the wall, like, wow, look at these things. They immediately start kicking them over. And I thought, well, that's interesting. There's a phenomenon when kids, when you're young, to see something, you want to break a window in an old farmhouse or knock things.
Just to see what happens.
Yeah, knock things over. And like I said, I'm not offended at all by that. If that's what they need to do, that's important. So I just climb over the wall and start stacking again. And the kids were, out of the corner of my eye, I could see the kids saying, ooh, oh, that guy didn't get mad at us. Next thing I know, they're stacking rocks. So the lesson was learned right there.
Right.
Learn to respect. And I never talked to the kids or anything. I just started going back out there and stacking them again. Pretty soon they were doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, I was talking with somebody the other day. I was like, I wonder if there's a way I could make a living. Somebody did give me $90 to build 3 rock stacks in their yard. I said, you don't have to pay me. It's like, no, you don't understand. We appreciate what you artists do. So I'm totally blessed that.
Yeah,
and I thought, well, maybe
yeah.
I'll go into Old Town and instead of busking like most musicians do, I'll bring in a bunch of rocks and stack them. Put a little tip jar out and stack them, and have your photo taken with this rock stack. They see me doing it, and like, how do you know how to do that? And I got nothing to hide. I'll share with the technique and stuff, and who knows? Because I thought, well, maybe I could make a living stacking rocks. Andy Goldsworthy's doing fine.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just a thing I do.
Well, it's appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you.
By me, definitely. Yeah, I haven't seen any for a while.
Well, that's because I've been doing a lot of pet sitting, house sitting. I mean,
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah.
I remember when I first met Esther Burton. She was, we play at the Spirit Room, and on a break we'd go and partake in some combustibles, and I'd go over to what I thought was her house. She said, oh no, I'm just house sitting for the winter. The people live in Mexico. And I thought, I'd like, make a note. When you get older, maybe you should do that. And now I'm doing it, and I have like 20, 25 different people that I pet sit for, and I stay at their home, and they love, because I'm a dog whisperer. I love dogs. They're the greatest teachers. And so, yeah, as a creative person, I'm doing just fine. I don't make a whole lot of money, but it's not about money. It's about experience and offering my services. What can I do for you? That's kind of my motto is, what can I do to help you? When I move, I don't want to bother anyone. When other people move, hey, let me know. I'd love to help you move. That's what I do. I don't know. And I feel like putting out all that good energy that as I get older and feeble, and that there's going to be a place for me. That I play nursing homes, and I keep secretly thinking, well, maybe there'll have a Dave Rentz room. Dave, you've been giving us this free music. We'll help take care of you. Not counting on it, but
Yeah. Put it out there.
Yeah.
It comes back.
Because I can't play forever, but my plan is to do it.
Yeah.
If I do have a choice, if I die in the middle of a drum solo at the Spirit Room at night, it'd be tragic for people, but at the same time, he died doing what he loves to do.
Yeah.
Because when I do play, I give it my all. I take it seriously. When I play to my full potential. I don't phone it in. Because I tell people, like, man, this could be our last gig, so give it your all.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, I know you do that. I've played in a band with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you find yourself? My body's starting to fight back a little bit. My fingers.
Well, as I was
get a little
unloading my
cramped
equipment last night, I was telling somebody, it's like, boy, I don't know how many more years I can do this. And they reminded me, like, Dave, look at how fast you move. You're going to do this the rest of your life, And
Yeah.
my mom's 90 years old. She still leads a senior exercise class.
Yeah.
memory's starting to go, but physically she's just a go-getter, still mowing her own lawn, and so I've come
That's
from
inspiring.
good genetics. And
I just thought of a piece of history, and this is when when my sister and I, Lori, came here. Another band of infamy, I guess. You were one of the original members of Combo.
me, Lori, and Slim.
You and
We
Lori
put
and
this
Slim
grit
and
together,
Teddy.
and Teddy Rocha was with us. And,
Yeah.
then we had another. I can't remember who the other bass player was. And then Terry Furlong, who used to play with the Grassroots, he joined the band. So we had 3 Telecaster guitars.
Yes.
Slim had his finger
was
picking,
twangy.
Lori had her slide, and Terry had his finesse of.
Right.
But 3 Telecasters, and boy,
That was 94, and that's when Mayor and Paul took over the Spirit Room.
Right.
And kind of, well, they kind of initiated or ushered in the not so dangerous bikers, but still,
Right.
you know, because in the early days, the Hells Angels would come through and stir up a little trouble. I had a great story from Ron Ballator about that, like 4 or 5 of the local Jeromans standing up on the hill with guns while he faced down the Hells Angels leader to tell him, you know, we're not going to fuck with you, but you guys got to get out of
Well, I
town.
remember when they put some signs up, noise ordinance strictly enforced with angled letters, and was just strictly enforced. And I thought, you know, people come in and see that, and what are they going to do? They're going to,
Yeah,
you know?
give
And I
it
thought,
one.
welcome,
Try and catch me.
welcome to Jerome. Just be cool.
Yeah.
I think people's like, I can be cool.
I can
and-
do that. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that was a little bit of a turning point. Those early '90 years when Combo started. Any stories or thoughts about that
Oh,
going on?
plenty of them. But, yeah, I remember playing up in it was up in Page. And I remember playing up there at some bar, Windy Mesa Bar, Saloon, or whatever. I remember playing up there, and then during the day going swimming in Lake Powell, and yeah. Then I did Lori's boyfriend at the time,
Yes, Doug.
Doug. I was riding my bicycle up. I was gonna ride to Kanab, Utah. I do a lot of bicycle touring. I was gonna meet a friend from Minneapolis, and I'm riding between Flag. I was almost to the turnoff for Kayenta and Tuba City, and it was looking pretty ominous, like a big storm was coming. I'm like, boy, what do I do? Maybe I'll have to go under a wash or something. And who passes me but Doug? And so he pulls over. Hey, Doug, how's it going? Dave, you need a lift? It's like, yeah, I think I'll take advantage of that. So he gave me a ride up to Page, and we stayed at the band house that we used to stay at, and he knew people up there. And yeah, that was. Then the next day he took me up to Jacob Lake. So I kind of cheated sometimes. If somebody offered me a ride, I would take it. I'm not so proud. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, what else can we cover? Any other stories about? I mean, I remember that as a pretty wild time when.
I remember when the Spirit Room was closed for a year and a half.
Oh, you're
I
kidding!
really don't remember.
That must have been just before I got there.
Between buyers, or I'm not quite sure of the liquor license issue. I really don't remember. All I remember is being up there and people coming into town like, what do you mean Spirit Room's closed? We've been coming up here for years. And it was kind of a sad,
spooky.
It was kind of sad, you know. I think there was still music over at Paul and Jerry's, but yeah, the Spirit Room being closed for that length of time, it was probably the first time since the bar initially opened.
Yeah. Wow.
There again, I don't remember what was going on, but who was the guy that played the washtub bass? And he was managing the bar. Craig McLean,
Oh, I
and
know.
he was playing with
McKing.
Mick King, yeah. And he had that washtub bass, and
Did you know any of those guys? McKing was that was a different style of music from you, maybe? but-
yeah. It's funny because now I'm really into bluegrass. I'm really into a group called Punch Brothers, Chris Thiele, Nickel Creek. And I never really thought, you know, I'd heard traditional bluegrass, but it was kind of traditional stuff, and it really never reached me. But Chris Thiele's Bale of Fleck on banjo, they're taking bluegrass into the 21st century and adding classical and jazz and funk and rock and pop and sense of humor. And so, yeah, but Mick King was an amazing player.
Yeah, that leads me down another story. That you talk about Major Lingo and some of the bigger bands, but you also made a point of saying that you love to play with everybody.
Yeah, well, I
Who
played
else
with
were you-
Slim. Slim had a weekend gig at the Palace.
You were
the
talking
Haunted
Slim
Hamburger.
Chance.
Yeah, and he was playing there for 5 years, and I'd go up there with a snare drum and brushes, and Esther Burton would be playing the piano. And,
Oh, no kidding.
Just a motley crew, and the most entertaining part was watching Slim be funny.
Yeah.
I have cassette tapes of him telling one joke after another and then strumming between jokes, strumming the chord. We never even started the set. And I remember one time he jumped up on the bar and got up there and he was doing his little dance or whatever, and then he fell off the bar and landed on the ground, jumped up, I'm okay. Hilarious. And we finally got around to playing music, but yeah, the Sunday Buzz Band was another.
Who's that?
Noel Frey,
Oh,
Joe Lazaro, Dave White, Greg Richardson, keyboard player who was in the Spam Tones. Yeah, I was playing with these other bands who I thought were pretty good bands, but they were too serious and really weren't garnering a lot of audience. So I come back on Sunday afternoon and play with this motley, out-of-tune group. But this group went over so well. People are like, "You guys are awesome." I'm like, "Well, make a note here. It's not about what you do; it's how you do it and how you share it with people."
Yeah.
And so the Sunday Buzz Band turned into the Buzz Band. So, yeah, now I'm playing with Slim and Noel again.
wow. Yeah. Well, there
Kind
you
of come
go.
full circle, and we just came together, and it's just like we get better and better, even though we don't even rehearse. You know, it's like, what is it? It's the chemistry. Everyone's on the same page. There's nobody running the show and talking down to anybody, and that's being shared with the audience. And we're packing them in on a mid week
Oh,
night
nice.
down at the
I got to
10,
get down
12.
there and see you guys.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
be there Tuesday.
Okay.
Tuesday, you be there.
Be there, be square.
Yeah, it's Bruce Wandemeyer on pedal steel and baritone. And I'm playing set again. I've been playing.
Oh, you
hand
have
drum,
been playing the kit
hand drum
again.
gigs
Yeah,
for the
because you
past.
kind of went Kunga.
Well, I started playing hand drums. And
Kunganese.
it was more convenient, quick setup. But
True.
I did miss playing drum set, but nobody wanted my drum set
Yeah.
skills. So yeah, so it feels good to be playing set again. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll have to get it. And this is at the 10-12 mostly, or are you guys playing other gigs?
Tuesdays and Thursdays down. Tuesday,
Yeah.
second and fourth Tuesday.
I'm so glad Slim moved back here.
Yeah, Slim moved back.
We needed him.
I sold him my RV about 10, 12 years ago. He moved, went to Austin where he was on his way to and got stuck in Jerome for 20 some years.
Right.
Then he went to New Orleans and picked up some funk and grease down there, and then Nashville, and went back to Portland where he's from.
Right.
And then he moved back, and he's back with a vengeance. It's the new improved
It's
Slim.
the new improved Slim.
He's in love with.
He's got a new girl.
Oh God, he used to be kind of cantankerous, but my theory was that he wouldn't give the time of day to somebody unless you had some character.
Right.
I had character, and so he always treated me with respect. And if you were kind of an idiot, he had nothing to do with you. But I go up to the Flatiron, or not Flatiron, the English Kitchen, and Slim used to cook there, but he'd always be the first one in there in the restaurant newspaper. You could always tell Slim was there in ink, perfect letters, aced the crossword puzzles, and I was real impressed with that. You know, Slim's a character. I love him dearly.
Oh,
and,
yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
funny guy and entertaining is all good.
Absolutely. No question about it. Yeah, I think Slim knows more jokes than most professional comedians. I swear he has a stack of, and sometimes, kids' jokes. I mean, he gets the silliest things and just makes you go, what?
He makes everyone feel comfortable.
Yes, he's such a great guy. I had a good interview with him too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very articulate, remembered a lot of stuff. We had a good time. And he played some guitar. And you're welcome to play some didge or some guitar.
Well, the
if you
mouthpiece
want.
is askew there. There's leakage.
Oh, leakage. I need to have it repaired, Dave.
Do you have a drum?
I don't have, that's the one
If I
thing
play
I don't
the table,
have.
would that upset your electronics?
That probably would be not so good. You play on the top of the little microphone. No. Leave it to you to find an instrument.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think of what else we can cover here. You got any ideas? Help the interviewer? I don't know.
Most of
I
my-
got a question for you. If you were able to put a message in a bottle to people who live in Jerome 50 years from now, what secret message would you want to leave them?
Jerome is a good fit for special people, for people that are looking for something regular, something more than regular and mundane and stiffness and uptightness. This is like I said, a healing center. This is a place for special people. If you think you're special, come here and try this town on for size. And if you stay here the rest of your life, then obviously you found home. This is my home. I've been here longer than I've been anywhere else, and I'm going to stick around and see how it all turns out.
I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I'm glad you're doing these interviews because people are leaving this planet left and right. And
Yes.
darn, we should have asked some questions. We should have documented
Yep.
their experiences. So thank you
Yep. Oh, you're welcome,
for
Dave.
doing what you're doing, Michael.
Should we wrap it up, or you got anything I haven't thought of?
Well, I got to go play music at the
That's
Spirit,
right.
Spirit Room. I don't know what
is
time it is.
Well,
But
it's only 11:30,
yeah,
so we've been going about an hour.
yeah.
We can take a break and then and think if there's some other stuff we've missed, we could come back because you got a little time before you got to go gig.
Yeah. I could use your restroom.
Yeah, I could do that too. All right, let's stop
So
for
we'll
a sec.
be right back after
We'll be
station
right back,
identification.
ladies and gentlemen.